The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi everyone, thanks for attending the Sage HR software webinar today presented by Mantralogix and Sage. We appreciate you taking the time out of the day to be with us, and before I turn it over to Sage's HR National Manager, Dina Derry, who will be reviewing the product today, I want to inform all of you that we will be recording today's session, which we'll send out to you afterwards. Also, the lines will be muted, so if you have any questions, please type them into the chat box, and we will have time at the end of the webinar to answer them. And so thank you all, and thanks, Dina. I will turn it over to you now.
Thank you, Matt, and good morning, everyone. My name is Dina Derry, and I will be spending the next hour with you trying to help answer the question that we presented you all with when we were broadcasting the upcoming webcast. Do you spend too much time managing all of your human resources needs? So our agenda today is hopefully to provide a little bit of thought leadership for you and some moral support for our HR and payroll staff. In my role, I get to travel all across Canada meeting with customers and business partners and other Sage users talking about current HR issues, current HR and payroll challenges, and really hearing from our customers what their focus areas are and some of the things that Sage can do to help them, particularly in my role with the human resources and the payroll challenges. So when we hear from our customers where they're spending their time, it gives us the ability to sort of do a little research and start to see where our customers fall in line with other businesses, to give you some tips and tricks today, and also to talk a little bit about the Sage HRMS software portfolio and how an automation tool like a recruiting solution or a time and attendance solution might be able to help you meet those challenges that you have for human resources, data collection, tracking, reporting, compliance, a lot of those day-to-day tasks. So I'm starting with a little diagram that I find very interesting when it comes to how businesses, larger businesses versus small to medium-sized businesses, how they tackle the HR payroll challenge. And I think what's interesting is if you look at the statistic there for smaller companies, and this would be typically for Sage, a smaller company would be under 300 employees, and a larger company would be over 300 employees, generally speaking. What's very interesting is how much time small companies spend processing payroll versus a larger organization. And in the past, we could attribute a lot of that difference to technology. A lot of larger businesses with a higher employee count, you would see a time clock on the wall instead of maybe a time sheet. Or the employees are using an employee self-service portal versus HR and payroll having to maintain all of the human resources paperwork. But what we want to do today is to get you thinking differently, because technology has really caught up with us for our smaller to medium-sized businesses. The cost of technology, we all carry a time clock in our pocket now, our mobile phone. We all carry an employee self-service portal in our pockets, our mobile phones, our tablets. And employees are using computers from home and away from the office more than ever before as well. So if when you're answering that question, do you spend too much time managing HR? Think about all the different pieces of paper that you may touch, from your employee onboarding packet of paperwork to a paper timesheet to a paper performance review. Those may be the day-to-day tasks that are bogging you down for human resources and payroll and making you feel like you just can't get to everything. So we know that HR and payroll are most likely the largest line item on your P&L. It's also your greatest resource. So what we'd like to challenge you to do today is to think differently, and how can we maximize the resource and minimize the amount of effort? Because we're assuming when you saw the title of the webcast, that's why you today. So it's how to reduce the amount of time that you're spending managing all of that employee information, and also how do we put it to work for us? How do we get that data in our favor? Instead of taping Post-it notes to our monitor to remind ourselves to do something, how do we get data actively working for us? And the answers are definitely looking at your current policies and procedures. Hopefully somewhere, maybe in your finance manual, you sort of have a diagram of how HR and payroll works, what your process is when you hire someone, where those forms go. It might be time to take a look at that process and update it. It could be as simple as replacing a paper timesheet with a spreadsheet for time. It doesn't always have to be a software tool. It can be a new procedure that you implement. Instead of a Post-it note, maybe we're moving to something in a sheet, or we're emailing a request instead of a paper form. We also want to look at ways that automation can help you. Many of the tools in the Sage HRMS portfolio can be standalone. For example, recruiting, applicant tracking. You won't need to change anything about how you process HR, payroll to add the Sage applicant tracking software. Same with time and attendance. You don't necessarily have to just make a wholesale change in how you do your HR payroll processing today. You can think about plugging in a piece or a new policy to help you start that automation process. And our goal today is to engage and empower employees and managers. So many of us are using our smartphones to participate in social media, to search the internet. We're becoming more capable of doing our own data entry. That also means we expect more real-time information as managers, as business leaders. And so that's what's driving what we see, and definitely me as I'm out working with customers. I see two things happening for human resources and payroll. And for most of the customers that I visit, and I probably was on site with more than 300 this year, and probably met around 2,000 or 3,000 between the Sage events host at Sage Summit, customer events where customers come together. We see two really key things happening for human resources and payroll. First, changes in the workforce. I entered the workforce in the early 90s, so I'm definitely not a millennial. I'm more in that Gen X, kind of right in the middle. When I entered the workforce, everything was paper-based. We had 13-column general ledger pads in accounting, paper sheets calculated on our desks. The way employees consume information now is so much different. And I think for a lot of our HR payroll staff, we're so busy keeping all the transaction parts of our payroll going, collecting time, processing payroll, getting deposits processed, filing taxes, putting ROs out, T4s. Our work hasn't changed from a transactional point of view for HR and payroll, but the employee expectations have. And I think if you think about your day-to-day lives, our management teams and our leadership are looking for more and more real-time information, faster feedback, faster data collection, and we're still, a lot of us, trying to do things the way we were doing them in the mid-90s, paper timesheets, reports after the fact. We may have at least one person on the webcast today who still print a report at the end of payroll with everyone's leave balances listed. I know that's how I used to do it. The change in workforce, expectations, demand for training, demand for performance, real-time performance information. The best examples I can offer, changes work-life balance expectations. For many of you who are hiring younger employees, you're feeling a push to have flexible work hours, a push for employees to have more mobile-friendly access to work data, emails on their phones, alerts on their phones, and we see family day now, a paid day off where we're encouraged to focus on the life part of the work-life balance. And I know that we're going to continue to see these expectations build across all the employee age groups, because as millennials are entering the workforce and they're driving some of this change, it's impacting all of our employees, even employees who've been with us 15 years, 20 years. Expectations do begin to change. The second thing that's changing, and actually, let me take a quick step back. When I talk about millennials, I always try to include a little diagram of what I mean when I say that. There are thousands of statistics out online if you want to answer this question inside your own business. I just happen to like this one because it really, for me, drills down to how generational ages are reflected by work commitment, work life, work balance, and how employees use information. So I kind of focus those last three lines, behavior. Imagine if you partner up a next generation employee, someone who at this point would be 16, they just are technology. They've never lived without a mobile phone. They've never lived without the internet at their fingertips. You have that employee partner with a baby boomer, or if we're in that age range in the office and we're managing our day-to-day processes like that, just imagine the difficulty those employees will have working together. I had an example just this week personally of myself, my doctor's office. I needed some information, and I found out that there's no way to email my doctor. And I thought to myself, that practice, that doctor's office will eventually cease to exist because they won't be able to attract younger patients. The same thing is happening in your business. It's also happening with the customers that you serve. So HR, you have some work to do to get your employee population educated. That may also explain some of the demands on your time, because that's where that's coming from. And then, of course, the work values. Those are very different as you look across the age ranges. The drive to contribute, to engage with your business. Imagine if you're hiring a Generation Y or an employee. Imagine their impression of your business if they come to work and you sit them down with an inch-thick paper packet of your information. This is a generation that can do everything on the phone. So I call it your employee experience. For those of you in HR and payroll, you really can start to think, what should our business be focused on as what the employee and manager experience should be. We can plan that a year out, 3 years out, 5 years out. But if today everything is all paper-based, it's all in the file cabinet, it's time to start shifting, because that's why you don't have enough hours in the day, because people are expecting more and more of that information to be electronic and less to be paper-based. Which is the other major thing for HR and payroll. So one is your changing workforce, your employees, managers, their expectations are changing. The second thing is it's a changing role, because HR and payroll are now expected to be more engaged in recruiting, retaining great employees, getting employees trained, getting employees in clients, making sure that the employee has the right expectation for what we expect customer service, what we expect for response times. These are things that traditionally weren't really under the HR payroll wing. HR and payroll were focused on paperwork, payroll processing, leave time management, and now and payroll have to be engaged in the critical business decisions, have real-time information. And HR information no longer stays just in human resources. Other people need information. They need performance review plans. They need goals. They need how are we recruiting, how are we retaining employees. Some of you may be hearing discussions about succession planning. If you are hiring a lot of millennials and your workforce is changing, now you have to plan how those longer-term employees will be replaced, and how all of that knowledge gets transferred. This is really a very big drive for business intelligence from the HR payroll staff, and not just the same way we've always done things just doesn't seem to work and keep up with this demand for information. So the concept really is thinking of your human resources and payroll function as a social media experience for your employees, for your managers. How can we shift our day-to-day HR payroll experience to be more like Facebook? Employees want to do more of their own data entry. Managers want to do more of their own data entry. That's the best possible news for HR and payroll. Less work on your end, collecting, double-checking, entering, re-entering all of that data. If we can provide systems to employees, they want to do that entry on their own. Perfect world. An applicant pulls their LinkedIn profile into their requisition when they do their application form for a new hire, and then HR can just pull all of that data right into human resources. So the employee themselves is the one who's keying the majority of the information. And then when they're hired, HR is reviewing everything. Then the manager instantly has access to things like job history, previous employers, skills, emergency contacts. But no one in our HR payroll team actually had to data enter any of that. It's just coming in automatically from how the applicant is interacting with our open position. So this really is kind of a key concept. And again, if you haven't had conversations within your leadership groups at your office about what you want your employee experience to be, now is the time to take this slide and use it to start a discussion within your own. How can we get to this point? Because this is how we're going to compete for employees. This is how we're going to retain people. And it's how HR and payroll are going to be able to tackle all the challenges, because they're going to do less of the day-to-day manual data entry and more oversight. I call it moving from being reactive, which is traditionally what HR and payroll has been. We get sheets after the fact. We get paperwork after the fact. We find out that a supervisor has someone go on an extended leave after the fact. So HR and payroll are constantly reactive, catching up, fixing things. We want to shift that team from being reactive to being proactive. They get an email alert when a manager is off on leave. We get an email alert when an employee worked overtime. So we get to fix things as they're happening instead of having to go back and play cleanup so often. So with the Sage HRMS portfolio, we can let your organization kind of connect the dots and move you to that automated, efficient employee information management. You can leverage your existing payroll. It could be Sage 300 or ACPAC payroll. It could be the Sage 300 or the Timberline payroll. You also could be outsourcing payroll and maybe have a Sage account system. You can plug in the pieces where they make sense. And I mentioned that many of them are standalone. So for example, if you have ACPAC payroll today, you could use time and attendance, you could use employee service, you could use the recruiting module without necessarily having to have the Sage HR in place. So you could keep doing what you're doing and start to rotate in new systems to help you, speed up something like time and attendance, which will then give you time to focus on maybe an employee and manager self-service portal, or maybe you're getting a lot of pressure to get automated performance reviews, some sort of system in place. Well, where do you find time to do that if you're running at 102 miles an hour already? You find an area where you can identify some time savings like time and attendance or recruiting or onboarding, and you move that into the employee and the manager's hands, And that should free up some time so that you can focus on that new initiative, automating performance reviews or eliminating HR forms, that kind of thing. So it would be good if you could wave your magic wand, but the reality is you need to sit down with your teams and sketch out that employee life cycle and employee experience that you're looking for. And again, you should take a 1 year, 3 year, 5 year look at it, because if everything is on for today, we can't wave that magic wand and move everything to the mobile phone. Employees will need time to adjust. They'll need time to be confident with the systems, and you'll want to on things slowly so you don't overwhelm those staff. If you back to my slide on who we are, if you employ a lot of long-term employees, it may be more difficult for them to adapt to putting their time in on a mobile device. New employees, they can adapt to it very quickly, but you'll need training time and ramp up time to get the employees using the system. So in your world today, when you think about what your employee life cycles are, if you're a smaller business and you recruit 2 or 3 people a year, obviously recruiting is not a high priority for you. If you have a lot of turnover or you have a lot of seasonal employees, things like onboarding, rehiring, that could be where your time is being consumed. Paperwork, doing data entry, checking everything. It could be in the area of payroll where things are really bogging down. That could be where you're spending so much time chasing timesheets, chasing supervisors to get approved, chasing corrections, because sometimes supervisors don't really look at timesheets. So it's pretty obvious when you sit down in an hour as a team, where are things piling up? Where are we having some of the most kind of blockages? And those things that we can target first and try to sort of divide and conquer and create our master plan for 2017 employee experience, 2020, and then maybe 2023, something like that, so that we have our strategy for how we're going to move this forward. So Sage HRMS is really a portfolio of products, software solutions that can sort of pinpoint those particular problems that you have. They obviously work together. They're all integrated together, but many of them could stand alone. So you certainly don't have to think about, I have to implement HR and then recruiting and then time and attendance. There's really no right or wrong way. We work with you together, Mantralogix and Sage, to help you identify the different pieces that you need, and then talk to you about your employee base and how supervisors interact with data. Can we bring them in for training sessions, that kind of thing? Are we going to have to do on-the-fly training because they're just busy? And then we can help sketch out a plan with you for how you could improve your HR payroll systems and processes. That's definitely something we can help with because we have an objective view. We know best practices, we know what other customers who are similar to you do, and we can make suggestions for, this business did and it worked really well. That does include, I mentioned before, outsourcing payroll. It certainly doesn't mean that you have to use a Sage product for payroll. So we work, again, with your business to help you together the right strategy for making HR and payroll information management more efficient. These are the modules in the Sage HR portfolio. Everything is centered around our core HR database. However, if payroll in ACPAC payroll, H300 payroll, or Timberline, the 300 CRE payroll, you could still use some of the modules to enhance the payroll data that you have already. There is a payroll module in HRMS. So if you are outsourcing payroll today or you're growing and it's just what you're doing is not working, that is another option to have payroll inside the core Sage HRMS. The self-service portal, our core system, is designed to be the umbrella for all of the other employee and manager-facing functions. So as an employee, I have one login I log into my self-service portal, and I have access to everything else I need, whether it's a timesheet, whether it's a leave request, whether it's my own benefit enrollment, if I need a link to our dental plan provider page, or I need a link to some health safety information. I need a link to refer a friend for an open position that I just saw posted in recruiting. I'd log into my self-service portal and I'd have access to all of the other functions that HR and payroll have given me security to access. So me as an employee, I might have different access to information than my manager would, for example. So when he logs in, he's going to see different information. Some of mine, for sure, he can see my home telephone number, my emergency contact, maybe even some of my job and pay history. So he does my performance review, he has all of that information at his fingertips. Based on your employee role, you can determine what employees can see and do when they come into the self-service portal. So our picture really is sort of like puzzle pieces where you can plug the pieces in to match your actual employee life cycle and employee and manager experience. They're all designed to plug in around that core HR database, but many of them can work as standalone puzzle pieces as well. And that gives you the flexibility of designing your 1-year, 3-year, 5-year picture. It's also the difference with the Sage HR solution and maybe something you may have looked at before with an ADP Ceridian where you sort of have one fits all aspect. The Sage HRMS is more a building block where we're helping, with your budget and with your current needs, we can do this, and then next year have different budget, we have different, maybe we're growing, we can solve that need of build your solution as your business grows, and we can then with you. Core HR database is where all of your information resides. It's the tool that has the interface to your payroll data, that's Sage 300 payroll or the Sage 300 CRE payroll or possibly outsourced payroll. It's where the core information about the employee resides. It's the tool that HR and payroll interact with every day. So I think of it as your back office HR database. Everything that we keep in this system is the master record for the employee, and then we're deciding what we're pushing to the other employee and manager facing pieces. Those pieces are all web-based. That could be web-based, meaning they have to be in a building or on one of your company networks to have access to it. It can also mean those are portals that we can open up to the web. Employees and managers could have access away from the office. For those of you in construction, for example, if we have foremen on site or managers or supervisors traveling, they could have access from their mobile devices, their phone, their tablet, and have information available at their fingertips. We can also, solve the challenge of an employee. We prevent them from being able to clock in and out or fill out their timesheet unless they're actually physically in the building or physically on a job. But they could still look at their mobile phone and see their leave balance or ask for a day off quickly from their phone. So there are certain things you can restrict employees from doing that make sense, that they really truly need to be at work to do, and then other things where employees could have 24/7 access from wherever they are to their own personal information. You can also connect the HRMS data to your payroll system. This panel is an example of some of the things that we can share between the Sage 300 CRE payroll and the HR system. The Timberline payroll, for those of you who still call it by its older names. So you can synchronize employee information. You can set up a process for new hires to from payroll to, or from HR to payroll. We can use the self-service portal to publish pay stubs, and those are all things you could do if you just had the Sage 300 CRE payroll. So we can do similar things with the Sage 300 payroll, the ACPAC payroll, and even some limited, if you're outsourcing payroll, we can still leverage the HRMS modules with that data as well. The last slides in our PowerPoint today are all focused on the software itself and giving you a look and feel of some of the screens so that after today you can talk with your team and then follow up with your Mantralogix account managers and see if they're, want to take a deeper dive. We can always do one-on-one software demos for you so you can actually see things live in action. But the rest of the slides that you'll see today are all kind of a day in the life view, so something a manager or HR and payroll administrators would see when they're in the software. This is a screenshot of the core Sage HRMS HR module. You can see on the left-hand side of the page there are tasks. So if HR is still fairly paper-based and human resources is doing a lot of data entry, at the very least the software will step HR through some tasks menus. So for instance, adding a new hire. The software has templates built in to walk you through the data entry when you need to process a new hire, when you need to do a push and change the job or change the pay. Again, for templates built in to walk you through all of the screens you may need to review or update if you're giving someone a pay increase, if you're terminating an employee. In the main window there, you'll see there's a menu across the top of the screen labeled Personal, Job and Pay, Benefits, Time Off. So these are the main headings where all of our employee information is stored. So we can see on this screen that we're looking at the employee information for job title, start date in that position, what we call their regular time person. That's all coming in from where you're processing payroll. And then we have the ability to add additional things like job classification, status codes, change effective dates, things that are really more HR focused and HR has been keeping maybe in the paper folder. So we're having HR and payroll now working together, no more duplicate data entry, and all of that data is coming into one centralized database where we're creating the history records. We'll be able to see, when the employee was hired, when we had a pay change, when they got a promotion. The HR software will collect all of that data electronically, and we'll begin to create the electronic version of the paper personnel folder so that more and more of your information is stored electronically in one place, and then we can feed those other systems that employees and managers can begin to interact with on a daily basis. When we can get to that point, that's when HR and payroll see the benefits. Less and less data entry from HR and payroll, more and more data entry and data oversight by our employees and our managers. So more real-time information available at people's fingertips, and then less and less responsibility for HR and payroll to be reactive. Now they're proactive. They're just approving things. They're reviewing the information, but they're not responsible for collecting it, checking it, keying it. They're just reviewing it. If I'm an employee and I get a new mobile phone and I want to change my phone number, I could hop into the self-service portal in 10 seconds. Today, that might be a paper form. It might be an email. HR has to look at it. They have to go into the payroll database and change it. They have to go into the HR database and change it. Maybe they have a supervisor telephone list. The reception keeps that. We've got to go into that and change it. With a self-service, the employee changes it once and it feeds all of those other areas so that no one's doing any duplicate data entry. Which leads us into our next slide. So this is a dashboard view of the Sage HRMS employee self-service tool. depending on my role, I'll have a menu at the top. You can see kind of halfway at the top of the page, Employee, Manager, Administrator reports. In this screenshot, I'm logged in as an HR administrator. So I have my own personal employee menu. I can see my home address. I can see the benefits I'm enrolled in. I can see my own skills, my own events. As a manager, I also have that information for all the staff that I supervise, and that's being driven from our core HR database. I also, as an administrator, could do things like approve a life event. If an employee has the birth of a child or has a long-term illness or something that requires some sort of benefit administration, I could be allowed to approve that. HR could be allowed to approve that. Leave request off summary at the top of the panel. I can see my own. I can also see that for all the staff that I supervise. Information like moving on the right-hand top panel where it says sent messages, you'll see Clint Eastwood changed his home address. He moved. So that could be something that I have to go and approve, or it could be HR is the one who approves it, but since I'm his manager, I'm at least notified that he had an address change, because maybe as a manager, I'm keeping some sort of log, or I just need to know, I want to congratulate him, you know, he just had his dream house. So the self-service portal can really engage the managers with their staff. We can use it, you can see there's a panel there in the middle for employee compensation. We can use it to show managers when performance reviews are due, what annual pay rates are. We can also replace that panel with employee anniversary reminders. So instead of seeing pay, the manager sees their hire dates and anniversary dates pop up every time they log in. It could also be an email that we're sending to them. Remember, John Smith's 10-year anniversary is next Tuesday. So there's a lot of things now we can automate, putting that data to work for you, updating managers, updating HR, and keeping you ahead. So also helping managers be more proactive with the information. If you look down the left panel, you'll also see things, if you look under the employment menu, you'll see handbook acknowledgement. We can begin to put forms, documents, links into the menu for employee self-service. So if I have a form for our dental insurance and the employee needs to remember to take that form with them, be a link they click in their menu to generate that PDF or email that PDF to themselves. If there's a company phone list that we want to display on the screen, there is a built-in feature menu to just populate it. There also could be a document that we've stored somewhere on the network, maybe directions to the Christmas event. And the employee needs to click on that, and that will take them to that document, or maybe a location on your network where there's a form you need to review. Looking to completely automate forms, you see menus at the very bottom, things like dynamic forms check. We'll see that feature in just a moment. There really is the ability for you to take your paper forms and translate them into computer screens. So things like performance reviews, you know, the paper form that you have today, or maybe a spreadsheet where managers answer questions or rank the employee or say meets requirements, needs improvement. We can actually build those in screen through your self-service portal, and employees and managers can do all of that through the self-service instead of a paper form that has to get passed around, or handwritten notes or post-it notes. I've seen lots of those, a handwritten performance review form, and then stuck on the back like 6 post-it notes from the year for a tardy, for something they did that was great, a comment from a customer. Managers could now do that right at the time it happens in self-service, and then that could just go right to the employee's performance review. So our self-service portal, just a last reminder, is really designed to be the jumping off point for all of the other things we're about to look at. So as an employee, I have one login to my self-service portal, and then I'll menu links to any of the other tools that you're looking to implement within the HRMS portfolio. Probably one of the most popular in the last 4 to 5 years has been recruiting and applicant tracking. So this is our HRMS recruiting module. I'm looking at a dashboard view as a hiring manager or as resources. So I can see all of my open requisitions, all the open positions that are available. I can see applicants that have been routed, maybe that specifically need my approval. If I'm hiring for positions in my own team, I can also see applicants that need to be routed. So if I'm a hiring manager, I could send evaluations for a new applicant to a supervisor. I could allow them to do their phone screen through the software or to do an interview schedule. I can also do things like automate all of my correspondence. So again, this is another area I hear a lot of our customers struggling with. You know, we post an open position and we get 200 applications on the first day. And then how do I respond to everyone? And we may have a great candidate in there, but I can't read everything fast enough. And by the end of the week, applicants are calling me. They want to know if the position's been filled. The software will start to automate all of that for you. You can in your own templates, so your kind of looks like Word. You build in your thank you for your interest email or letter. So if an applicant applies to the portal, the software can send that thank you for your application. It has been received. We're evaluating this position for 10 days. If you receive an interview questionnaire in the next 3 days, it means you're being considered. So you can sort of automate all of that response. You can also have the system connect to your HR view. If HR had terminated the applicant in the past and marked them as ineligible for rehire, again, the software can take over, send that applicant a thank you for your interest. Please be reminded when we terminated your employment in X year, we did let you know you would not be eligible for rehire. That way, no one ever has to even interact with that application. The software itself is weeding out that applicant and sending them something very nice, letting them know that they don't need to keep reapplying because they're not eligible for rehire. You can do the same thing with qualifications. If you post a position and you have some requirements, a certification, a license, a number of years of experience, or even just availability to work. This position requires some travel, nights and weekends, and the applicant checks the box that they're not available to meet those qualifications. We could have a template that just sends them a notification. Thank you for your application. Unfortunately, your skill sets or your availability does not fit this particular position, but we'd invite you to come back, review our other open positions, and please apply if there's anything else you'd like to see. The system can also send an applicant an invitation. So if a current employee refers someone, if you ever wanted to have a referral program, you can change that in the software, or even just this person recommends the person, the software could send that person an email inviting them to come in, create a profile, and review all the open positions. And the positions are just being posted on your company website, and we do integration to job boards, things like Monster, Hot Jobs, Indeed. When you post the open position in the software, send the new open position out to those boards. And then, of course, the link is bringing the applicant back to your web page where using your service portal. No, they think they're still a company website. They are using the software to go through the recruiting process on their own. Are you familiar with Vancouver? Grouse Mountain Resort is a Sage HRMS user, and they're using our recruiting tool. So if you'd like to see what it looks like from an applicant's real life experience, just go to there and click on their job page, and you'll see what it looks like from an applicant's point of view in real life. Time and attendance definitely one of the other hot topics lately. How do we get away from the paper timesheets and all of the manual tracking? And this is probably the area where technology has really caught up with our small business owners. Uh, because like everyone is carrying a time clock in their pocket now, or in their purse. So being able to use your mobile device to clock it out in real time, to fill out an after-the-fact timesheet, to request a day off, that literally can all be done now from a computer, from a mobile phone, from a tablet, or if you still need employees using their finger or their hand or even a key fob to clock in and out, if you have a warehouse and it's just not appropriate to have a computer out there or a tablet on the wall, about a tablet in the break room. That's definitely something we're seeing more and more, putting an iPad on the wall. And then employees can use that for self-service. They can use it for time and attendance. But if you still need the clocks, we do have biometric clock options, so that's certainly something you could choose. And this is a dashboard view for a manager for time and attendance. So being able to do things like schedule your employees electronically. I have Jerry, he's a 4 employee, and he forgot to punch in today. So the software is alerting me that he needs lunch. Or I have Mark about halfway down the page, he's approaching premium. Premium could be unscheduled time, it could be overtime. Basically what the system is telling me is that when I put his schedule, it could be very basic, just 7 to 4 Monday through Friday, but when I told the software when I expect for him to work, he's reaching that limit. So it could be something that is over my budget, or it could be he's about to hit overtime and I need to look at his time because I may need to send him home. The software can also let employees request time off, publish a time off calendar for the entire department, entire company. You can even do things like mileage reimbursement requests and some simple expense reimbursements. We know a lot of you do that on the timesheet. So if you take away your paper timesheet, we've got to replace it with something that employees can use to put that information through so that it goes through either accounts payable or payroll. So that can all be automated in your time and attendance system. My favorite, and this one is kind of the magic wand. So this tool is called HR Actions, and it's really something that typically comes at the second or third phase of your HR automation. And what it does is replace any of your remaining paper HR forms. So the more complex things. You saw in the self-service portal where an employee could change a home telephone number or request to change a home address. But if we need to do things like new hire onboarding, pay changes, performance forms, those things are usually kind of multi-question, multi-response types of forms, pretty complex for most of you. We can move those now to an employee or a manager using the computer to go through that whole process. See on the right side it says View Routing Initiator. So Veronica may be the person who initiated the page on the first line for Gonzalez. And then the routing is H1, which example data is Human Resources 1. When HR approves it, then E1, the employee, is then notified. So back when I used to process payroll myself, I hated pay changes because if a supervisor was out or my HR administrator was out and that pay change didn't get approved in the right pay period, that meant next payroll I was calculating retroactive pay. And I had to go back and look to see, maybe pay period, 2 pay periods, what should it have been, do the correction, then edit the timesheet. It was just a mess. If I'm the payroll administrator, now I have a dashboard view. I know that pay change needs to get approved. If A1 is Virginia Bell and she's out sick today, if I have the right security, I can get the approval done, or I can go to the right person electronically. I don't have to chase them down. I can push it to Veronica and send it to her boss. Still see the full audit trail. On the third line there, you'll see the performance appraisal. Human Resources 1.0, that's our office administrator one, then back to the employee, then back to their manager, and then on to HR administration. So forms that require multiple approvers, that can all be handled electronically. You'll see the audit trail in the software, and at any point, any one of those people could send back with their note. If the department manager has a question, for example, about a performance review, they can stop it, send it back to the person that previously approved it with their note, and then we can all get that handled, and all the records are now electronic into Human Resources, updates HR, updates people, and creates that very valuable history record. So now if we want to look at trends or statistics, we have all of that data. We're limiting the amount of data entry we have to do, and no more paper forms going into the file cabinet. The module is really still a very kind of wish list item for most of our customers, but we are beginning to hear more and more requests for it. We want to make sure that it is part of the HRMS paper, and that is training and learning management as far as designing a training program, kind of ticking off as employees complete trainings, and of course managing things like certifications, licensing, making sure that employees are compliant in case you have positions that require those types of licensing certification requirements. That can also flow in time and attendance. So if you need scheduling and you need to schedule only employees to this job site that have this license, or for those of you in healthcare, or some sort of service where there's a certain certification required for an employee to do that job, we can make sure that the employee is fully licensed or fully certified before we schedule them. We can also just keep that as a kind of behind the scenes look. So if we're just tracking things like completed trainings, new hire orientation, effective management or effective communication, we can track that from a simple point of view. Some of that you can do just in the HR module. You don't need the training and learning management that you see here. But like I said, we're hearing more and more performance-based plans that customers want to do. So that certainly is a component. And this system would allow you to publish content. So, it could be simple. The next time HR does a new employee orientation, they just record themselves on their iPhone. The employee has a link from service, they can watch it. Or it could be we're bringing a trainer and we have content, or we want to put web classes together. We're going to have some content, and employees are going to sit in front of a screen, go through training, take a test, make sure they kind of comprehended all of the information, and then that get their certification. So if you're having kinds of conversations internally, this is a module that can be standalone. To have a training administrator, they could use it and not necessarily have to impact HR or payroll. And the last two thoughts I want to leave you with really come back to why we wanted to host the webcast, and that is to help you answer the question of, are you spending too much time? Is the HR payroll information management frustrating? Within 3 years, 52% of our workforce will be those millennial employees who are expecting your HR payroll experience to feel like Facebook. More importantly, at the same time frame, almost 40% of you will have at least one millennial manager. So think about the information drive that those employees will be placing on HR and payroll, and think how you'll keep up that information. So going back to where we started, thinking about what you're doing today for HR payroll, where the paperwork is coming from, data entry you're doing, are you doing it in multiple places, and really giving yourself and your team the time to look back and say, if we're doing things the same way we've been doing them for the last 10 years in HR and payroll, we've got to take a step back and figure out how do we get employee and manager experience more efficient, more empowered, and getting those employees to do more of the data entry instead of HR role always being reactive with all of the entry. So at this point, we are going to take questions. As Matt mentioned in the beginning, the chat window is the best place to submit questions. So if you haven't been typing your questions, please take the time to do it now. With the last few minutes that we have here, we're just going to take any of the questions that have come in through the chat window.
Hey, Dina, so we have one so far. What is the usual implementation time for Sage HRMS on Sage 300 construction?
So typically, I'm going to slide back up to the slide with all the modules so I can talk about that one. Usually the human resources module itself is somewhere between 4 to 6 weeks for implementation, and then depending on the other modules you're looking at, then you would add some time on. So typically for Sage 300 CRE, we would see the HR module, because there's so little information in the CRE payroll for HR SelfService, and maybe one other module. So all total, you probably would be looking at a 3 to 6 month project. It was maybe HR SelfService and time and attendance. But the HR module itself is usually fairly quick, maybe 4 to 6 weeks. A lot of that depends on your availability. And remember, importing all of the employee demographic, job title, pay rate, name, address, SIN, will be importing that from what you have in Sage 300 CRE payroll. So you're not starting from scratch, but you probably have a lot of information in those for personnel folders, so that will take some time to get into the software. You may also use this time to ask managers what kind of spreadsheets they're being, think about your data now and where you're keying data. The more we can have electronic data, even a spreadsheet, the faster you can get your HR module off and going. Great question.
Yeah, great.
Any others?
Yeah, one more as well. Just wanted to, they said to confirm, is Sage HRMS also cloud-based, or if not, will it be soon?
So HRMS, I would call a hybrid. Our core HRMS base, the HR database, is an on-premise licensed install, just like your Sage 300 CRE and Sage 300 ACK, the Timberline and the ACK. The other modules, everything that's listed there under additional functionality, those are all web applications. Most of them you choose. They could be hosted from your location, or they could be software as a service. So you can have them hosted by time and attendance or by the employee self-service, or you choose to have them hosted. If you open a website, your network infrastructure already has a web server, so you could host it yourselves. We are a software as a service or a SaaS application, so I wouldn't say JMS through cloud. The software license is yours, and your IT team would still have the responsibility of downloading upgrades and quarterly tax updates, things like that. We see that as a benefit because it gives HR and payroll control, where a true cloud application, the software is updating things down to you on their timetable, not necessarily yours. But HRMS really is kind of a hybrid on-premise and potentially web-based solution.
Okay, looks like there's another one here. Is there any integration between Sage HRMS and Sage Paperless?
Sage Paperless. That is not a module I'm familiar with, unless, not that I'm aware of, no. Only through the Sage construction payroll is where the HR integration is.
Okay, and then last question is, how many hours do you think roughly it is for implementation? I know we talked about weeks, but how many hours do you think roughly that is?
That would be different for each customer. We'd have to look at your employee count, the modules you're considering. That's definitely an in-depth discussion for your Mantralogix account manager, and your actual team is going to be different for each customer.
Okay, cool. All right, I think that's it. I don't see anything else. So with that, I guess, Dina, thanks for your time today, and thank you to everyone who attended our webinar. As mentioned earlier, we will be sending out the recording out in an email shortly. And if you have any further questions, please send an email to myself, Matt, and Walter at Mantralogix.com, and I can send it to the appropriate person and take it from there. So thanks again. Thanks, Dina. And I hope everyone has a great rest of your day.
Everyone.
Thanks. Bye.